the part where he says, what they're doing is illegal. They write bad things about me and it's illegal. It has to be illegal.
It's not illegal.
I mean, I get that words don't matter in Trump world, but they actually do matter.
He's the president of the United States.
That's
He's
right.
the president of the United States.
That's right.
Who has his people that we know will follow his instructions in the Justice Department. He handpicked those people that will not say no to him. So if he says, here's what I think should be illegal, go find a way to make it illegal and to punish these people, it's going to happen. And it's all fine and dandy for the Republicans or one side of the country until he takes up an issue that they don't agree with. And now it's turned on them, and now they're in the crosshairs.
Here's the thing, are we really having this conversation that
Yes,
we're saying that what Donald Trump just said as the president of the United States, standing there in the Department of Justice, saying that freedom of speech and the freedom of the press and all that is illegal? This is insanity. This is the president of the United States, where we have a Bill of Rights, where there's the freedom of the press, where our founding fathers wanted to make sure that you had the freedom to be able to report without the government coming down on you and fear of being prosecuted for that. This is 2025. This is not 1789, when you had the Alien and Sedition Acts and all of that were used against people who were critical of the government. Are we going back there? Could you imagine, would you sit here and say it was just a typical stump speech if Barack Obama or President Biden or President Clinton ever said the things that Donald Trump just said?
Well, it wouldn't be a typical. It wouldn't be a typical speech.
Because it's not typical.
But it wouldn't be a typical speech for him. But if you talk about and we shouldn't ignore the point that Donald Trump was making about the weaponization of the Justice Department.
Are you serious? Come on.
Well, I'm serious because I'm saying it. I'm serious because I'm saying it. Because many of us saw during the Biden administration a number of things that happened. Think of the Hur report. Many people saw the Hur report and they said, well, Biden was just well-meaning. Think of the Russia collusion narrative, the fact that many people were going around saying that Donald Trump colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 election. It simply wasn't true. 51 intelligence officers signed onto a letter saying that
Donald Trump threatened 100 times to use the Department of Justice to weaponize against his enemies.
Let's just take what you're saying at face value, okay? You mentioned the Hur report. The Hur report was widely accepted to be incredibly devastating to President Biden. They were so mad about it, they tried to get him to not release it. That was the Biden Justice Department releasing a critical report about the president.
Yeah,
same Biden Justice Department.
It was also the
prosecuted his son.
It was also the Justice Biden
Justice
Department said that he was too old and too decrepit that he couldn't be charged. Yeah. That's what the report
He was
said.
well-meaning.
He was well-meaning. No, he lost it.
You can't be that outraged and say the justice system was used against Donald Trump, but not be outraged when he's doing the exact same thing. You have to acknowledge that.
Well, I'm not outraged at all. I'm giving you an analysis of the politics of this. I'm not outraged by any of this at all. I accept that this is something that Donald Trump has done many times before, but I think it's pretty hypocritical for people to now be concerned about the weaponization of the Justice Department or even concerned about police officers, because we know prior to January 6th, there was no love for police officers out there. We saw that in the Black Lives Matter movement of 2020.
Are you concerned about weaponization or not?
I absolutely am.
So if you are concerned about weaponization, you would be upset about it if it happened to Trump or if Trump was doing it, correct?
I've been on this show many times before. I don't have a problem being critical of Donald Trump. I don't think that Donald Trump should have been at the Department of Justice talking about news outlets being illegal or any of that.
Are you as offended by Donald Trump wanting to weaponize the DOJ as you are about allegedly Joe Biden weaponizing the DOJ?
No, the question isn't, am I as offended? I wasn't offended when Joe Biden did it. It was just something the politics of the day. It's something that we talk about. But the fact that I'm able, but you can't tell me what it is that I should accept. I said that I didn't make a big deal about it when Joe Biden did it, and I'm not going to make a big deal about it when Donald Trump did it, despite how it may be wrong.
Joe Biden did not weaponize the Department of Justice. Let's just be clear here
about
that.
Biden's administration weaponized the Department of Justice. We don't know what Donald Trump did because we haven't even gotten there yet. We haven't even gotten there yet.
It is a slippery slope, and it's hypocrisy on both please
sides.
Stop talking for just a second, because we can't all hear you when you're talking at the same time. Dante, I will give you the last word because you're with us for this segment. Go ahead.
Let's not choose who was worse or better in weaponizing the justice system. If it happens, it's wrong. It's a slippery slope that we have to call out when we see it. We're on this platform right here. We have an opportunity to say, guys, we can't do this. We have to pay attention to what's going on, and we have to stop this, because if we don't, there will be a situation where I can't say what I believe in if you disagree with it, or I'll be punished, and that's not what America is. It's not what America should be. So we should call it out no matter who's doing it, and it's happening right now.
I agree with that. We just don't do it, though.
Dante Mills, thank you very much for joining us for that. Everyone else, hang tight. Coming up next, a Democrat